Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the Bartarelli Foundation for the chance to speak today. My name is Andrew Deary, and I'm Head of Enforcement and Compliance on the Blue Belt programme. So it's a pleasure to be able to stand here and tell you about a key environmental protection initiative that's been championed by the UK government. So the Blue Belt programme honours a manifesto commitment to offer 4 million square kilometres of ocean long-term protection. The UK and its overseas territories are custodians to the 5th largest marine estate in the world, and this includes globally significant biodiversity, including 94% of British endemic species occur within the territories, and 85% of critically endangered species for which the UK government is responsible for also occur within the territories. The programme covers 5 of the 13 overseas territories. That's Ascension, St Helena and Tristan da Cunha in the Atlantic, South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands, British Antarctic Territory, Biot obviously, and Pitcairn as well. So the MMO is delivering the programme in partnership with CFAS, and we're also working with the overseas territories, governments and administrations on behalf of the Foreign Office and DEFRA. So we feel crucial to the success of the programme is working with external stakeholders, academics, and experts in various fields. We're hoping this will ensure access and will lead to the success of the programme. So the programme is taking an integrated marine management approach to effectively manage the marine areas as a whole across all 5 overseas territories. This approach ensures we're all working together for a sustainable future where the environment is protected, local communities benefit. And we're working with each OT independently to try and deliver specific tailored management strategies to their needs. So we have a work plan agreed with the Bar Administration. This includes work with the Zoological Society of London, Stanford University, to investigate interactions between pelagic species in the marine protected areas. That's focused on tuna tagging work. We're also working with BARTA on the impact of the nearshore recreational fisheries. We're developing a water quality programme to capture the impacts of pollution events. We're also we're assisting them in developing their conservation management plan, which includes a marine pollution response. So how does IMM work in practice? There are 5 stages. So the first is understanding the context of the MPA, the species and the habitats involved, and the threats that they face. And this must be based on reliable data and sound science. The second stage is to decide how best to manage those activities and how to protect them from the threats that are identified. That's done through the development of a management plan. Stage 3 is that the management plan is implemented, and this places a requirement on marine units to comply with legislation, permit conditions, etc. Stage 4 is a feedback loop of constant assessment and review. And stage 5 is the revision of that conservation management plan if any of those objectives have been compromised. So moving on to the compliance and the enforcement work. A key piece of work we've done across the programme is profiling the IUU risk in each overseas territory. We're doing this for 2 reasons: to understand where and when that IUU risk is highest, and to try and get a granularity of understanding about the industry and the fishery that we're enforcing against, because that's key to making it effective. We couple this with intelligence. That hopefully introduces the intelligence-led risk-based approach we're trying to lead across the programme. And we have a number of surveillance assets available to the programme, crucially the satellite surveillance, we'll come on to in a minute. We operate from a viewpoint that 100% surveillance coverage all of the time isn't necessary or efficient. So we're trying to target that using the risk profiling. A key point is the MMO doesn't have any tasking authority over any of the BART assets. That includes the BART patrol vessel. A key aim we have moving forward is to try and be more predictive rather than reactive, or like I say, doing just general surveillance. And we think we've got an opportunity to capture the more dynamic environmental factors that we'd like to factor into the risk profiling. So I mentioned satellite surveillance. This is a key surveillance tool we've got available to us across the programme. It's already up and running within the programme, and it's been done under a contract the MMO has with Catapult. So it's been tasked in accordance with our risk profiling. It works by the synthetic aperture radar looks for vessels. It then overlays that with the AIS system, and that will identify any dark vessels, i.e. vessels that aren't lit on AIS. It then cross-references them with the relevant RFMO records to make sure they're authorised to be in the area, so in the case of BAR, it's IOTC. And then the results come to us, and then we take that on and have a look at the recommendations, etc., that Catapult make to us. The second is the new technology that's available to across the programme. So we think if this is implemented effectively, and we sort of take due consideration of the enforcement issues the OT government themselves are trying to address, we think this can be a game changer, and it potentially offers solutions to issues we previously thought were unanswerable, particularly in the context of very large MPAs. The slide shows there some of the technologies that are available. One of the sort of more outlying options is cameras on the backs of albatrosses, which we haven't put up there, but it's something we're going to consider, I think. So it's like I say, it's an ever-changing field with constantly increasing opportunities with technology being developed. And what you'd recently have considered to be military grade or very high cost options are increasingly becoming available to us. So for each territory, developing a bespoke roadmap and we've identified the needs and where we can apply this technology. We're focusing on two main types of technology. One of them isn't the albatrosses. It's passive acoustics and drone technology. So in June this year, we took the opportunity to work with ZSL on a joint drawing project. ZSL were using it for megafauna surveys, and we felt there was a compliance and enforcement application for taking footage and evidence of IUU activity. The lessons and the outcome for that are currently being factored into the next spec for the next phase. So as I referenced earlier, we've done this current profiling, and it's primarily based on open source information, things like historic catches, historic patterns of IUU. So I think we saw this slide earlier. This is the risk matrix that I'm kindly showing on behalf of MRAG, and it shows the typical type of information that we're trying to use, or we have used. But we've got, this is where the Lackadive Ridge and the boundary cross. Now we've got a narrative from our background reading, etc. That you have periodic eddies that occur here and they move north up into the MPA. And that creates two IUU scenarios. One is that the gear that's deployed outside it gets trapped in the eddy and moves into the MPA, and then the vessel goes in after it to retrieve it. Or probably more serious is vessels that are deliberately incurring to try and target this type of eddy. So we think probably the key drivers for this are sea surface temperature, chlorophyll A. But so put simply, there's a good fishing opportunity inside the MPA, and that creates a risk. But our current profiling doesn't allow for this type of dynamic approach. And it also doesn't allow for the lead-in, for the resource. We have to be able to predict this occurring to allow the deployment of any technology or any resource. So simply put, there's a bubble of warm water inside the MPA, and we want to survey it, but we have to be able to predict when it happens. And we're hoping there's some scientists here, or you can put us in contact with scientists that could help us try and have a look at this. The second there is a phenomenon we've seen in the other territories. Sometimes it looks like we suspect this, that operating on the fringes of the legal fleet are sort of more serious vessels engaged in more serious IUU. So they're dark, they're not lit on AIS. In those circumstances, they're less likely to be RFMO authorised, etc. And this kind of represents this sort of phenomenon of suboptimal IUU that it looks like we occasionally get around the legal fleet. So I think that we'll wrap it up there. I just thank you for your time. I'm really keen if we can get any kind of engagement with anyone who can sort of help us or guide us or assist us in this. So thank you.